You know what I hate? I hate when people do videos throwing money at strippers or bartenders and people be like, oh, what a waste of money. Why you throwing money at strippers and shit? And it's like, because they entertaining. Don't y'all pay money to see artists in concerts? Yeah. Don't y'all pay money to the circus? Yes. Don't y'all pay to see sports game? Yes, because it's entertainment. And it's like, oh, you guys could help somebody that's in need. They are in need. They need to pay their rent. They need to feed their kids. They need to live. They need to survive. The fuck? I know when I was a stripper, I needed money.
My name is Mona Marie. I'm the owner of Poetic Justice here in the Bronx. I run a pole fitness studio, basically a pole lounge and art space here on Mars Park, located in the Bronx. I teach, train different women of walks of life, how to get fit, how to feel confident, and get empowered. I'm originally a dancer by heart. I've been dancing, stepping, and modeling since I was 12. When I was 20, I walked into a club that was in Hunts Point for the first time. And I was just so intrigued by the women that was on top of the pole. They were doing these tricks and these spins, and I was just like, how the hell did that even occur? Like, I was just baffled. And I stood there the whole night just watching, observing, looking at the whole environment, and just looking at what was going on. And I went in the week later, and I auditioned, and I literally stayed at the back of the club, and I just watched the girls, and I mimicked what they did, and I just taught myself how to do the pole. I was used to being on stage because I was already in performing arts. So performing in front of people wasn't the hard part. I just didn't want to look silly when I was on stage.
You gotta be in the building. Mona Marie right there, magnificent, baby. Oh!
My name is Aura, and I'm a student here at Smith. I'm from New York City, and this is my last semester here. Before coming here, I was actually a stripper. I started stripping for a living because I lost my job as a home insurance agent. So I decided to try something new. It's something I was always curious about, but never really had the courage to try. But at that point, I was sort of sick of just working the traditional 9-to-5 jobs. I also really wanted to have a lot of my time to myself. When you work regular 9-to-5 jobs, you don't have much time to kind of work on other things. So I started dancing for a living, and then I decided to kind of go back to community college. And I enjoyed the flexibility. Like I was able to pretty much go into work when I wanted to go, and if I didn't want to go or wasn't feeling well or had too much other work to do, I didn't have to go. So I really, really, really liked that. I wasn't sure what I was getting into when I first started dancing, but I just knew that I wanted to see for myself what the world was like. I heard mixed stories about it. You hear the bad things all the time, and I was already well aware. But I was also just sort of curious about the fast money, and I wanted to see how true that was. Once I sort of immersed myself in the world, it's like I saw a little bit of everything. I did see the negative stereotypes that people refer to when it comes to just sex work, but more so it was a regular job. What amazed me the most was the women's confidence and the sense of agency and control that most had. And I just couldn't understand why they were so stigmatized, especially women of color. Like black strippers and sex workers are super stigmatized. It's like they're hypersexualized yet undervalued. So I was having a hard time understanding where these mentalities come from and why people feel the way that they do.
Because Africans were usually unclothed in their native countries due to the heat, Europeans believed they were uncivilized and animalistic people with uncontrollable sexual desires. Black women specifically were expected to be very easy and to respond enthusiastically towards any sexual advance, and the idea that black women were naturally sexually immoral was reinforced by the Slavery Institute. Slavery also existed as a sexual economy, and its institution depended on black women to supply future slaves. They were impregnated by every method imaginable, and the constant image of pregnant black women reinforced the stereotype. Slave owners would often sit at the dinner table and discuss the caliber of a particular breeder as if the women were cattle. Slaves were also often stripped naked for examination before being sold off at auction blocks. Nakedness in this time suggested a lack of civility, morality, and sexual restraint, even though they were forced to be naked. White women, on the other hand, wore clothing over most of their bodies. The contrast between the clothing reinforced the belief that white women were civilized, modest, and sexually pure, whereas black women were crude, immodest, and sexually deviant. Because slave women were property, legally they could not be raped. They continuously endured sexual harassment by the master and the subsequent jealousy of his wife. White women blamed black women's alleged hypersexuality for their husbands' actions, thus reinforcing the perpetual image of the lascivious black woman.
I ain't showing the black girls no love. Y'all don't want to let them bartend. You don't want to let them dance. You ain't letting them eat. They're doing some bullshit, and I peeped that shit last night. I don't be going to strip clubs. I ain't know that bullshit was going on. There's some racism going on in the strip club.
I never experienced blatant racism, but I witnessed it, and even in my own experiences, I saw how colorism works. So basically, the darker your complexion, the harder it is for you to get work or for you to get customers or certain days. But I did notice that I seemed mixed enough for some customers, but for others I wasn't mixed enough. So I definitely did see that, and for a long time I just sort of chalked it up to preference, because a lot of people like to say, oh well, we all just have preference, but then you sort of have to think about where that preference comes from. Preference is really prejudice and proximity to whiteness.
I know that some of my coworkers have been discriminated against. Colorism is a thing. Racism is a thing in the gentleman's club. When it comes to management wanting a certain looking girl or a certain type of girl, or certain days some girls can't work. And fortunately, I was lucky enough because I stand out as far as being a pole artist. I don't experience the same things as some of my coworkers do. But it's still a very touchy and bothersome subject.
Even today, black women are hypersexualized through media, through music, through film, through print. Everywhere you look, black women are pretty much hypersexualized, but still stigmatized and undervalued. But the minute we own our sexualities, it's a problem. So it seems like everyone else is allowed to benefit from our alleged sexualities, but we are not, because once we do, we perpetuate the stigma and the stereotype of the Jezebel or the lascivious black woman, or just the hypersexualization in general. So black women can't own their sexualities, much less profit from it. When I first came to Smith, I decided to clean up my social media. So basically, I deleted any pictures that alluded to my stripper past, or whatever, any sort of sexy pictures or sexy poses. I just deleted it because I felt that I was now coming to Smith, so I had to be more respectable and I don't know, just have a cleaner image, I guess. I wasn't sure why I felt that way, but I did. Then I went to my first convocation. insane. I mean, naked students running everywhere, pretty much just pasties and thongs, and it was just so crazy, and my mouth would just drop, and I just couldn't believe it. I'd never imagined that they would make the space for that here. Although I attended all of the convocations and I saw what it was, I still didn't feel comfortable embracing my own sexuality.
Respectability politics first emerged in the 19th century in post-emancipation Christian women's activist circles. Women founded schools, churches, and provided social welfare services to enhance their respectability and promote their communities. Members of the Black community believed that by disassociating themselves from negative stereotypes, they could finally avoid negative responses from society. If Black people behaved accordingly, dressed properly, and complied with authority, they would be accepted and respected as equals. This respectability politics also attempts to go against the racist stereotype of the lustful Black woman by upholding her to the white patriarchal ideal of what a lady should look and behave like. Black women believe that by adhering to the image of white womanhood, they would demonstrate that they are not deserving of rape, abuse, or stigma. By completely disidentifying with sexuality, they could protect themselves and their communities. Unfortunately, the community began to police each other and sexuality became a taboo topic.
Oh man, my friends and family reacted. Well, mainly my family, they was just like, oh my God, my daughter's gonna be a stripper. And it was just a lot of back and forth. It wasn't until they came to see me at the Gentlemen's Club and I did a whole feature performance. It turned out amazing. And it wasn't until that day that I got my family's approval.
Personally, I feel white women have much more space to explore and experience their sexuality. Black women and women of color, we don't have the same space. We can't afford any margin of errors, so a lot of us, we're afraid to even explore it, but I just don't feel it's the same for white women. Even through media, you have the classics like Pretty Women and Breakfast at Tiffany's, where they own their sexualities and they profit from their sexualities and they get rewarded for doing both. You rarely ever, I can't even think of any representation within media where a Black woman has the same space to do any of that. It wasn't until this last convocation where I actually participated and I wore one of my old stripper outfits and I wore a crown and it says former stripper on it, and I just walked through the streets in my stripper outfit, and honestly that outfit was still very respectable. I still had boundaries.
Yes, I have gotten aroused. Hell yeah. Man, all the time. Every time I look at myself in this mirror and I'm on the pole, all the time. I need to be able to turn myself on before I can turn on the rest of the room. So I engage myself, especially because, you know, most clubs, they have the mirrors. So I look at myself in the mirror as I'm performing, and I do that purposely because I want to see what other people are seeing. And if I'm unable to make myself aroused as I'm performing, that means I'm not grabbing the crowd's attention. Sometimes I get baffled because I don't understand how blessed I can be to have so many incredible women that walk through these doors. Regular women with actual professional careers come through these doors. I have a student that's studying her PhD. I have teachers. I have a nurse. I have actually a doctor. And it's just crazy that they all just want to come and just feel confident and feel sexy.
Women should be allowed to explore and own and profit from their sexualities if that's what they choose to do.
Freedom is something that we don't allow ourselves in our everyday, especially women, we don't allow ourselves to be free because we're so busy worrying about our responsibilities and being a mom or being a wife or being a girlfriend or being, you know, a boss or, you know, being a good co-worker. And it's just like, we don't allow ourselves to be selfish enough.
Obviously, mostly men create a market for sex workers, so I don't understand how a lot of men also turn around and stigmatize and degrade sex workers when you create that market. I don't get it.
Have you ever wifed a stripper?
Wifed a stripper? Never. You don't do that.
Why would I do that? Strippers are weird.
The most annoying thing about working in this industry, it has to be the certain type of guys that come in there. Some of these guys feel so entitled. I never understood why they feel so entitled. You know these guys ain't shit because you just see and it's just like, wow. And mind you, we're meeting at least 300 guys a night. We're crossing paths. So, and it's different personalities, different ethnicities, just different ways of thinking, and it's just like, oh man, like, I guess I'm gonna like be single for the rest of my life because I don't see anything out there. Although I'm not single, but I don't see anything out there. It's just crazy.
Most work is no different from sex work. Everyone sells their body for profit. Sitting in uncomfortable, cold cubicles requires the use of time and bodies. Movers work long, grueling hours by painfully using their bodies. Salespeople stand until their feet hurt, and coal miners practically sign their bodies up for cancer. In the end, we all work to make some white man richer.
My job is to be a very pretty therapist, because that's exactly what I am, because the people that want us to get 9 to 5, they're miserable in their life, so they come to me to sit at the bar and have a drink and have a little conversation. And hence, from my conversation, I get a fee. That's basically what it is. I get paid for my services. Except I don't have a fancy office. I just got one big office that have poles and a bar. Look how lucky I am.
And I totally understand that people feel that dancers should get a 9 to 5 and we should have regular jobs. But at the end of the day, most people are not even happy with their 9 to 5 jobs or doing what makes them happy in general. So it's like for you to encourage other people to do what you're doing and be miserable, because some people have 9 to 5s that they're happy at and most people don't. And it's just like, you know, we made a choice to be entertainers, and we're pretty freaking happy doing what we do. I enjoy what I do. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and it's been a joy in my life. I discover something about myself. I feel empowered every time I get on stage. I feel empowered every time I am performing, and it led to other things in my life.
Honestly, this should go on a resume.
I've learned so much. I learned how to communicate with different people. I learned how to work in groups. I learned money management, time management. I learned communication skills. I became a people person from it. You learn how to interact. And it's just the same way. It's the same way as any other job.
Luckily for me, I never did it for the money, so I didn't, the money was just a plus. It was more secondary for me. I just really found my joy and happiness when it came to me actually just being on stage. When it comes to drugs and sexual abuse in the industry, that's everywhere. Although I work in the sex industry, that does not mean that, it just happens here. This happens everywhere. I'm sure you can't look at one of your friends who is a female, or talk to your mom, or talk to your sisters, and they don't have a story of sexual assault. And I'm sure they don't work in the sex industry, so it's not just exclusive to just us. Drugs is everywhere, everywhere.
If you think about Hollywood, there's heavy sexual and drug abuse there, but that lifestyle is glamorized. I don't want to glamorize the sex industry because it definitely has its pitfalls, but what I'm arguing for is safer practices. I want to challenge the frameworks and the systems in which sex work exists and make it safer because it's not going anywhere.